Maybe we'll begin.
We might as well begin. Hi, I'm Graham Whiteman.
I'm Lynn Whiteman.
And I'm Andrew Harry. And we form the Pride. We are the team at LionHearted. So far, we've got to a point where we've drawn a distinction between awareness and consciousness as two separate experiences. One being of the mind, one being related to the heart. One requires effort to maintain an equilibrium and to deal with the constant pursuit of trying to enjoy life and be happy, and how do they say, the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of pain. But it's an effort, and that effort is contributory to, in our experience, issues relating to stress, anxiety and depression. In many ways it can lead to an exhaustion.
Which is not where well-being is. They're all areas of stressful emotion, anxiety emotion, all areas which are away from well-being.
That's right, and one of the things that's caught on in a contagious way over the last year or so has been this approach of mindfulness, which is an attempt to work on this level of awareness with the mind, but to resolve this imbalance and to try and bring the mind back into balance and reduce the amount of effort being expended to make sense of that dialogue internally.
It's a bit of an impossible task because this is always going to be moving from one position to another, isn't it?
So what would the benefit of mindfulness be then? If it is it there just to reduce and dampen that
sway, really.
That sway, yeah.
It could do, but does it? If something happens and something is an awareness within the person seems to be that they are more aware of when they're off balance, and so they're still trying.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
is to be able to recognise when we're off balance.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be aware of being off balance will enable you to
aware when you are in balance.
To think about how to address that, and that comes on to another term that I think have been conflated over the years, over many years. Has been this issue of contemplation and meditation. And it seems to me that contemplation is the term that reflects this process of trying to recognize and bring into balance the mind as it's flopping from positive to negative, from hope to fear, all these polarized perspectives within the mind. And meditation is a bigger approach. I'm going to come back to that perhaps, but I think we're agreed that.
But there's still an energy in what we said earlier. It's still in the way of energy consumption. Even mindfulness, trying to slow all that down.
Indeed, and it's an attempt to reduce the amount of energy taken.
Yeah, isn't that?
Yeah, so it's taking energy and it's effortful.
But it's reducing.
Is effortful.
It's effort. It requires effort, but mindfulness is attempting to reduce the amount of effort. To bring the balance, which will bring a sense of well-being and an enjoyment in life, if there's enough space to calm the mind down.
Which people do struggle with. They do struggle with doing that.
But it is a genuine attempt. Mindfulness is a genuine attempt to dampen that process and reduce the amount of effort required to stop the exhaustion, to enable to quieten the mind, to contemplate a bigger picture, perhaps.
By breathing in a more determined manner, correct and balanced. So it is moving into the area of making people aware of their own well-being. Because it is their own well-being. There's not some outside influence that could be in place. We have to be aware of what's happening with us. For us, through us.
Okay, so if we go back to the cradling effect, and this going back to the heart, and the lack of effort required to experience that, to be conscious of something, how How is that different to awareness?
It starts from a calm base. It doesn't start from a trying base, it starts from an allowing base.
Okay, so if there's effort and there's ease, there's a distinction between the two. Then is perhaps another distinction the fact that with awareness it's about thinking, and with consciousness and this ease and in the heart area it's about feeling.
It would appear to be that simple. But
So
there
if
is
we
a
go back,
delineation between the two.
so if we go back to that other picture, the circle and the dot, is that perhaps an ancient symbol just to recognize that thinking and feeling are two separate things?
It could be, yeah, awareness, consciousness. That fits
Okay.
within that.
Because there's also a groundswell of people looking at self-awareness or self-realization, and they're attempting through mindfulness to achieve this self-identity through thinking about it. And you reach a point of awareness itself in many ways, but if that's on the circumference, then that's not a central point, is it?
It's not it's like there's individual central points all the way around the outside, and you stay around the outside in that scenario.
So the scientific assertion that
like a bubble,
the self is an illusion actually holds true if you look at it from mind, thought, and awareness.
Yeah.
So we don't disagree with that process.
No, the self's got to be somewhere, and
So
in that, and the thought being that self, there's an illusion to self at that level.
yeah, it's a thought of self.
Yeah. So therefore, in that scenario, yeah, thought is an illusionary. Self is an illusionary process.
Okay, so if self is not inherently, our identity isn't inherently centered within awareness or mind or thought, then the other place to look is obviously in consciousness, in feeling, in the heart.
Well, you're now starting to answer the big question.
But
who are we?
Well, I mean,
Isn't that what we're moving towards there?
I think scientific community accept that the old sort of spiritual traditions that our identity with discursive thought or mind or awareness, as we've termed it, is the cause of all human suffering.
Yeah.
Why don't we go somewhere else to stop this suffering, to experience and explore the notion that we can find a self in a center? And if the dot is representing the heart and consciousness, wouldn't it be good to explore consciousness in the heart as a feeling and not as a thought?
But then stepping from one to the other. Do you have to step from one to the other?
Well, perhaps if we accept the wisdom of the ages and this unchanged, very simple model, perhaps they're asserting the fact that thought is secondary to feeling, and they are two different things. There is no continuum between thought and feeling. There is a distinct step from one to the other, like oil and water.
Yeah, but they they coexist.
Yeah.
So we're not saying they cannot exist together. They do, and they almost need each other to be in place. But the self, from what appears to be an illusion, is in the awareness bubbles all the way around the outside.
So when we're young, we're in consciousness and we're in a relaxed, calm, held state,
Cradled state,
which has no effort. And when we're starting to explore the world, we develop, if you like, a bubble of awareness to explore the world. And then we, unfortunately, choose to identify with that bubble of awareness as ourself. And that's when the problems start. Yes.
Some are bigger than other problems. Some are bigger than others.
Well, it seems to me if people have capacity and greater capacity and explore their bubble of awareness, they can create bigger problems for themselves because of their greater capacity to do so.
Yeah.
So
the exploration we have is, can people just relax back?
Well, that's what we've been trying to develop and understand, is how to reach a deeper level of well-being than you can get just with awareness and thinking. I mean, I think we all applaud the rational, reasonable approach of the scientific community to come to a point where they're saying, well, we've got so far with our rational thought, but if we take all the other traditions and our own experience into account, there must be a deeper and different level of well-being out there that can be achieved.
Yes.
So the fact that they're pointing to something else within their scientific empirical approach, and if we're suggesting that you merely deconflate the terms that have been used, that deeper sense of well-being is already in plain sight. It's called conscious feeling in the heart, rather than mindful thinking in awareness. So is it helpful to break these and make a distinction between these as a working model, rather than saying that's the way it is, but just to deconflate the terms?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's what it just needs, just some clarification that we can all work with. It's certainly convoluted, to say the least. And do we ever, where are we going with the mind being totally responsible for stress, anxiety, all the uneasiness, the dis-ease. It's very good at that. And that's where we would say the awareness bubble seems to fit with that method, with that sort of model, is the fact that the experience of self within a bubble is the mind actually providing us with stress, providing us with anxiety, because it's trying to bring itself back to balance all the time. So it's utilizing energy all the time.
But it's always an uphill struggle.
That's where the struggle is, isn't it?
And you can see why people get, mental exhaustion or all the other things that go with it, because it's sort of constant play that's going on.
Okay, and of course that has ramifications on your health as well, because if your mind is diseased, distressed, then it puts an undue influence on your nervous system and your immune system, and all sorts of things start to collapse. So in order to if we were to find a definition of a deeper sense of well-being that could be empirically modeled and shared so that it is available to other people, then that could be, if we could correlate the subjective experience of individuals that did correlate with changes in the mechanisms of play, whether it's the nervous system or the immune system or the physiology, there's nothing to say that this deconflation of terms and splitting out awareness and consciousness couldn't still be seen as scientific empiricism. Still a reasonable, rational model to explore the experience of ourselves.
Yeah, it fits within the area where stress can be measured as a physiological reaction in the body. Sweaty palms,
So we're not challenging the scientific approach in correlating that evidence. All we're saying is there's somewhere else to look.
Yeah, for something else.
But it's not
deeper
thinking.
That's happening.
This deeper level of well-being can be experienced through feeling, through conscious feeling, rather than merely sticking to thought processes.